Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at the heart of modern Germany. You know, when you walk the streets of Berlin today, you see this vibrant, completely rebuilt, modern metropolis. But right beneath the pavement lies a sprawling, clandestine world. We're talking about 25 miles of forgotten tunnels, massive bunkers, and subterranean shelters built under the watchful eye of Adolf Hitler. This was his underground Reich. It was this vast complex designed to protect his regime and defend his crown jewel while he sought world domination. Now, when the regime finally fell in 1945, this dark underworld was sealed away, buried in rubble, and honestly, largely wiped from history. That is, until now.
To really wrap our heads around this hidden city, we have to look at the massive effort it took just to rediscover it. Enter the Berlin Underworlds Association. This is an incredibly dedicated team of over 300 historians, archaeologists, and archivists who have spent a staggering 10,000 hours researching, clearing, and mapping these forgotten spaces. And here's why that matters. Because 90% of Berlin was completely destroyed above ground during the war. This underground realm actually provides an unparalleled, untouched gateway directly back into everyday life in Nazi Germany.
Part 1. The Flak Towers, Fortresses of Concrete.
So the catalyst for this frantic race downward was an unexpected British bombing raid in August of 1940. Hitler was absolutely furious, and he ordered immediate, massive defensive structures. The sheer, staggering scale of the engineering here is just unlike anything else. Across the Reich, they poured a mind-boggling 200 million tons of concrete. To put that into perspective, just to construct one of these flak towers in a mere 6 months, they literally had to completely alter the national train timetable. They needed 1,600 tons of material delivered every single day, and they even went as far as commandeering barges from France and Holland just to transport thousands of tons of steel, gravel, and cement to the sites.
Take the humbled Athene Flak Tower, for example. It was essentially a medieval tassel updated from modern warfare. We're talking 7 stories tall, with exterior walls 8 feet thick, and capped by an 11-foot thick solid concrete roof meant to withstand direct bomb hits. But here's the interesting part. It wasn't just a weapons platform with 360-degree firepower and mechanical hoists moving ammo. It actually served a dual purpose. It acted as a massive civilian shelter capable of protecting 15,000 Berliners, complete with its very own hospital.
The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is that while the engineering was cold and massive, it was operated by human beings, and often incredibly young ones at that. As the war dragged on, children as young as 15, like Joachim Carr, were drafted right out of their classrooms. They were positioned way up on the roof of this fortress, manning heavy 12.8-centimeter anti-aircraft guns. Imagine that. Teenage crews hiring up to 12 massive rounds every single minute into the sky, desperately trying to bring down Allied bombers.
Part 2. Germania and Civilian Shelters. Now, Hitler was completely obsessed with transforming Berlin into this futuristic, super-sized capital he called Germania. He envisioned massive, traffic-free squares and grand subterranean transport hubs, digging 60 feet down into the earth in 1938. But as the war turned against him, those megalomaniac dreams had to be abandoned. So instead of carrying trains, a 240-yard tunnel became just one small piece of a sprawling network of over 1,000 ad hoc underground survival shelters, ammunition dumps, and bunkers. Basically, basic survival took absolute precedence over architectural grandeur.
A really fascinating example of this is the mother and child bunker. Deep underground, this abandoned transit tunnel was converted in just 6 months into a facility holding 99 rooms for 1,300 people, protected by 5-foot-thick walls. And it gives us a chilling look into the everyday ideology of the regime. Strict segregation was heavily enforced. Signs clearly indicated that only Aryan Germans were allowed inside. No foreign workers, no Jews. Plus, because Berlin naturally has a really high water table, just surviving down there meant fighting a constant, exhausting battle to pump out the groundwater.
Part 3. Tempelhof's Hidden Aircraft Factory.
Let's shift over to Tempelhof Airport. It was originally designed personally by Hitler as this massive air stadium for 100,000 spectators, but it underwent a deeply secret transformation. Deep under the runways lies a breathtaking maze, 6 levels down and 40 kilometers long. The complex was entirely self-sufficient. It had its own power and water plants, and to keep morale up, there were even Lufthansa employee bunkers decorated with surprisingly cheerful murals of everyday Berlin life. But its true purpose? Deadly. Safe from the bombs above, the Nazis set up a whole underground assembly line, building and repairing Focke-Wulf 190 fighter planes suspended from motorized racks, pushing them straight out to the front lines right up to the war's final days.
However, this marvel of underground manufacturing hides a very grim reality. Historians discovered a hidden cache of 12,600 factory time cards in a nearby bunker. Out of those, 4,000 belonged to Eastern European slave laborers. As the Nazis plundered occupied countries, they literally forced thousands of these abducted workers into the suffocating, highly dangerous tunnels of Tempelhof. They were made to churn out aircraft 24 hours a day under absolutely brutal conditions.
Part 4. The Fall of Berlin.
As we move into the spring of 1945, the whole narrative shifts dramatically. The Red Army reaches the outskirts of Berlin, and the underground city becomes a landscape of pure human desperation. The timeline of this collapse is just terrifyingly fast. On April 20th, a visibly trembling Hitler, who had retreated entirely to his impregnable Führer bunker, makes a brief surface appearance to award medals to teenage defenders. The very next day, there's a final air raid, followed by an eerie battle pause. It was a silence that absolutely terrified Berliners. Then, the storm broke. The Soviets launched the largest artillery assault in human history, dropping 2 million shells on the city in just 2 weeks. By April 30th, with the Russians mere streets away, Hitler took his own life.
Because above ground meant instant death, the population fled downward, and the conditions inside these civilian bunkers were horrific. Imagine up to 50,000 terrified people crammed into a single bunker. Survivors described the claustrophobia as unbearable. The air was thick, wet, and suffocating. There were no sanitary facilities for tens of thousands of people, making the smell absolutely putrid. And the sheer noise of 2 million shells exploding right above them, people said it felt like their brains were literally cooking inside their skulls.
Driven to the brink by these hellish conditions and fueled by years of relentless anti-Bolshevik propaganda, a profound psychological darkness really overtook the city. Terrified of what the Red Army would do to them, an estimated 100,000 people, often entire families together, committed suicide in April and May of 1945. For a lot of them, taking their own lives seemed like the only escape left from the apocalypse happening all around them.
Yet even in these final, bloody hours, the bizarre machinery of the regime tried to push on. Deep under the Reich radio building, protected by a massive 6-meter-thick ceiling, an 18-year-old news announcer named Richard Bayer was reading out propaganda, telling a destroyed city that Germany was still winning the war. It perfectly captures the profound disconnect of those final days. You have this kid safe inside an impenetrable concrete box, broadcasting to a city that was effectively a graveyard, wondering if anyone out there was even left to listen.
Part 5. The Final Escape.
With Hitler dead and the government quarter completely surrounded, the remaining loyalists attempted one last desperate maneuver. They decided to use the very tunnels they had built to try and slip right beneath the Soviet army. The escape route was this grueling subterranean journey. They entered a derelict bunker under the traffic ministry. From there, they accessed the subway connections, hoping to bypass the raging street battles up on the surface. They walked for kilometers northward through these pitch-black transit tunnels. The goal was to emerge safely and cross the Weitendamer Bridge. But the plan failed completely. As they emerged, wave after wave of escaping loyalists were essentially mowed down by Russian guns.
If you go down there today, haunting physical remnants of this doomed flight still exist. Deep in the transit system walls, you can actually still see signs reading Flu, which is the German abbreviation for a fire escape way. They're painted in stark black letters on a yellow background. The arrows point deeper into the tunnels, serving as these eerie, untouched guideposts for the final terrifying journey taken by the remnants of the regime.
Finally, Part 6. Unearthing the Dark Past.
When the dust finally settled, the Allies systematically cleared the destroyed city above, pretty much erasing the visible footprint of Nazism brick by brick. But down below, the 200 million tons of concrete stubbornly survived, preserving the layout of the fascist state in the dark. But here's the amazing part. What Allied bombs couldn't destroy, time and nature slowly are. Today, archaeologists are finding that roots from trees in the parks above are breaking right through ceilings designed to withstand the heaviest artillery in human history. It's this poetic, undeniable victory of nature, slowly dismantling the invincible fortresses of a fallen empire.
And that leaves us with a pretty compelling thought. The Berlin Underworld Association knows for a fact that there are still dozens of bunkers left totally unmapped, lying just 60 feet below the bustling streets of a modern European capital. So as the digging continues, what final, chilling secrets of a dying regime are still down there, waiting in the dark to be pulled into the light? It's a powerful reminder that history is never quite as buried as we think it is. Thank you for joining this explainer. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next one.